It's Thursday, March 2025, and you know what that means. It's another NBA 2K25 player ratings update. This is the 8th official 2K25 update. As always, I'm Pete Toll, aka PT Sports 84, going to go through every team in the association and break down who went up, who went down, kind of give you some additional analysis um, for each team as we go. As always, make sure you please click that like button. Make sure you're subbed if you're not already subscribed to the channel. And also make sure you share this video. The more you share it, the more it hits the algorithm and the more views we get on it, which means more content to the channel. All right, let's jump into it. As always, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. It's just a lost season basically for the Sixers. Joel Embiid, obviously, out for the season, going to have knee surgery. The extent of his surgery yet is unknown. I believe he's still exploring some options, Germany, some things like that, to see what he can do to get back on the court faster and stay healthier. We shall see. But in this update, Embiid actually dropped a point. He dropped -1 to a 93 overall. And just a quick disclaimer, anybody that wants to know any badge changes specifically, make sure you're going to the Operation Sports thread. That's the 8th official NBA 2K25 player ratings update. Underneath my initial written changes, the Real 2K Insider always posts the badge changes, a lot of significant analysis. Make sure if you're also not subscribed to his channel, Real 2K Rosters, you go and do that as well. John does great work, always insightful content. So look out for that in the thread below. But back to the ratings, Tyrese Maxey drops -2 to an 87. He's kind of had a back and a wrist injury at the same time, so not really been scoring as efficiently. Only averaging 17 points on 34% shooting from the floor, 22% from three. Just not getting it done right now. Paul George, man, got hit with a groin injury. Looks like doesn't seem like he's going to miss considerable time. At least hasn't come out yet that he's going to miss time with that injury. But if the Sixers do decide to kind of tank for the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, maybe we'll see George shelved. But he's been struggling in his own right. 15 points a game, 43% from the floor, 30% from three. Just not the guy that they thought they signed. There was a reason why Steve Ballmer, who's one of the richest men in the world, said no to giving him the same contract that Kawhi Leonard got. So, I mean, you could have read the tea leaves there, but it is what it is. Quentin Grimes, however, has stepped up big time, 20 points a game, 55% from the floor, 42% from three. He gets a +3 bump to an 82 overall. Yershon Yabusele actually drops to a 79 -1. He is essentially kind of in and out of the lineup as they kind of tweak with what they're doing. I believe he started last game next to Andre Drummond. And then Oubre actually shifted to the two, and then Paul George shifted to the two. Oubre shifted to small forward, and then Quentin Grimes essentially played the point guard, but Paul George did a lot of the ball handling. So it is what it is. That's just because Maxey was out. But anyway, Andre Drummond gets a +1 bump to 77. Justin Edwards is back healthy, +1 to a 76. Ricky Council the fourth, -1 to a 74. And then, as you can see here, some of the changes they made, not necessarily in this roster, but just roster wide. Jalen Hood-Schifino added on a two-way contract, so there he is. Moving on to the Milwaukee Bucks next. The Bucks are interesting just because they're playing like a combination of guys that, it's interesting to see Kuzma at small forward, Taurean Prince at shooting guard, and things like that. But yeah, so Damian Lillard actually drops a point, 91 overall. He's averaging 24 points a game with 5 assists on 46 and 37 shooting, which not too bad there. But I guess they deemed it was a drop just a tiny bit. The next change is Brook Lopez +1 to an 83 overall. Lopez averaging about the same he was before, 14 and 7 on efficient shooting. So maybe that was to get him in line with Bobby Portis' rating, which was already an 83. Kyle Kuzma, as I mentioned, shifts to small forward. He gets a +2 bump to an 82. Decent enough scoring, 46% from the floor, 35% from three, 8 rebounds a game on 15 points. Solid enough. His defense is kind of what's been standing out, believe it or not. Gary Trent Jr. gets a +1 bump to a 78. Kevin Porter Jr. +1 bump to a 77. He had a triple-double last game, which pretty good for him. Torian Prince, like I said, shifts to shooting guard. No ratings change there for him. AJ Green gets a drop -1 to a 76. AJ Green still solid enough, 43% from the floor, 43% from three, 9 points a game there. Ryan Rollins got his contract converted to a standard contract. Andre Jackson Jr. shifts to small forward. He gets a -1 bump, or -1 drop, I should say. And that's it for the changes, other than Jamari Boyer coming in on the two-way contract slot that previously was occupied by Ron Rollins. Pete Nance comes in as well on a two-way contract. Going over to the Chicago Bulls, at this point, if you're a Bulls fan, it's like, well, we just lost Ayu Dosunmu, so it's like just play the young guys and move on. But I don't know that that's in the plans for Billy Donovan. What has been going well for them has been Josh Giddey. I mean, he's been amazing over the last couple weeks. And just for reference, I didn't mention this earlier, but the stats that I'm pulling is basically from the day before the last roster update, which I believe was the 13th, or the 12th, I should say, because the update was on the 13th up until last night's game. So that's kind of where I'm getting my stats from. I'm just trying to figure out why somebody went up, why somebody went down, things like that. But Josh Giddey does get a bump here. Josh Giddey goes +2 to an 83, 22 points a game, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists. That's really good for Josh Giddey. Turn around, and he's shooting well, 51% from the floor, 59% from three. Kobe White, 18 points, 41% from the floor, 30% from three, 5 assists. He drops -1 to an 82. Zach Collins, it seems like anytime, now Zach Collins does deserve this, so don't get me wrong, but it seems like anytime big men do well, they get a jump right away, while sometimes I've noticed some wings and guards take a little bit to get an update. I don't know why that is, but Collins is averaging 14 and 9 in 28 minutes, 56% from the floor, only 22% from three, but it is what it is. +1 bump to a 79. We get a +1 bump for Matas Buzelis. Buzelis is averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds on 41% from the floor. Not shooting it well from three, only 22% as well. Kevin Huerter has been in the rotation considerably, has actually started to come around after struggling initially. 13 points on 40% from the floor, 43% from three. He gets a +1 bump to a 77. Now we're going to see Trey Jones in the rotation consistently. They actually probably, in my opinion, just my opinion, you guys might think differently, should have shifted Lonzo to small forward in this one, but they didn't, and I would have moved Patrick Williams up there, but, to a power forward, but that's just me. Last but not least, Dalen Terry, +2 bump to a 74. He's been in the rotation just okay, I guess. Doesn't shoot well from three, only 13%, but 48% from the floor overall. 5 points in 14 minutes. I guess solid enough overall, but, like I said, the Bulls should look at moving to considerably playing the young guys throughout. So we'll see what happens down the stretch. Cleveland Cavaliers, they have, of course, been on fire. With that, Evan Mobley gets a big boost here. He goes from 89 to 92 plus 3 bump. Mobley's averaged 18, 11, 4 assists to go with 2 blocks, 57% from the floor, 29% from 3. A lot of people consider him to be the defensive player of the year now that Wemby's out for the season. Darius Garland drops -1 to an 88 overall. 16 points a game, 36% from the floor, 30% from 3. Kind of struggling. Does have 8 assists, though, so, is what it is. Ty Jerome has been fantastic this year. Jerome is up to 17 points a game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists in this time frame, 47% from the floor, 50% from 3. We also get Isaac Okoro moving to shooting guard. Okoro has kind of just been a solid self defensively. I don't really look at his points. I mean, he's averaging 5.5 points on 49% from the floor. It's more about his defense, why he's out there. Dean Wade drops -1 to a 74. Only 4 points a game on 40% from the floor. 3 rebounds in that 17-minute time frame. So struggling a little bit. But he is coming back from injury, so that could be part of it as well. Really quickly with the Cavaliers, they bring in Daquan Tomlin on a 2-way contract, so he is now a part of the roster. That's somebody I think that they want to keep moving forward to see what they have out of him. Boston Celtics are next. So the Celtics have been a mixed bag. I mean, you can make an argument they're still going to be there when it comes to contenders in the East as far as the finals. I'm not saying that they're terrible. It's just they've kind of fallen backwards just a tiny bit. Like some games they look really good, and then other games they just look like like kind of a contender, but not a serious one in a sense. Not saying, like I said, that they're bad. It's just I don't know if they play down to certain opponents or what it is. But anyway, let's look at the ratings changes for them. Kristaps Porzingis -1 to an 88. Porzingis still at pretty much the same number scoring wise, 18 a game, but his rebounds have dipped a tiny bit. He's only at 5 rebounds for this cycle. Drew Holiday has really struggled. He's injured, so to me, until he gets healthy, he's going to continue to struggle. He gets a drop -1. Al Horford gets a +1 bump to an 80. He's slightly improved back up to 9 points a game, considering he was at like 7.8 the update before in that span. So I guess solid enough for them to bump him up. Luke Cornett drops -1 to a 77. I mean, I guess that's more to get him in line with where Sam Hauser is rather than above him at a 78. But that's all the changes for Boston. We jump over to the LA Clippers. Clippers have kind of been up and down as well. James Harden does get a +1 bump, 26 a game. He's averaging to go with 6 rebounds, 8 assists. I mean, to me, James Harden should have been an 88 a while ago, but it is what it is. Kawhi Leonard technically is the power forward now when he does play because he's at the power forward. Essentially, my guess would be when Powell comes back healthy, which, of course, he's not injured here. Go figure. But he has a hamstring injury. When he comes back, I think he'll be the small forward. Then you've got Dunn, the mix of Dunn and Bogdanovich. So you got defense, then scoring at the 2. Amir Coffey can fill in at the 3 right now for Powell. And because Derek Jones is actually the backup 4. So it's interesting that they didn't switch Leonard, Powell, especially those two, shifting them up. But I guess it is what it is there. But Chris Dunn, I just mentioned, he actually gets a bump +2. His defense has been fantastic. He's actually shot it well, 52% from the floor, 39% from three, 8 points a game. Also in this stretch. And then Ben Simmons gets a bump +2 as well to a 78. Ben Simmons averaging 7 points to go with 5 rebounds, 5 assists. And he's only playing 21 minutes, 58% from the floor. Obviously, he doesn't shoot, so it's all at the rim. So I don't really look at that. But that's the Clippers. Let's jump over to the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Grizzlies got some bad news the other evening. They lost Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, while they gained Ja Morant back for last night's game, after the game, Morant said that his shoulders were really bothering him. He didn't feel great out there. I hope it's not a continued trend where Ja Morant's going to get injured again and then he's out pretty much for the playoffs. I mean, they have Scottie Pippen Jr. that they can rely on. They've got Luke Kennard can play point in a pinch. Desmond Bain, same thing. But you really want Ja Morant there as far as a guy that can drive and make the defense be pressured. But he's going to be a liability if he's got a shoulder instability also. So it's kind of a mixed thing there. Hopefully they can get back healthy. Speaking of who is not healthy, Jaren Jackson Jr. out for at least week to week. We'll see what happens moving forward with the ankle sprain. But Santi Aldama came back last game as well. He does get a +1 bump here, 81 overall. Santi, 13 points a game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists throughout. So he's been trying to do it all. 45% from the floor, 37 from three. Jalen Wells has been fantastic this season. I really actually like watching him. It seems like from the box score, well, he doesn't really do anything great, but if you watch him on the floor, he does a lot of the little things that not a lot of rookies do, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He's averaging 12 points, 47% from the floor, 37% from three. He does get a +1 bump to an 80 overall. Brandon Clark, likewise, +1 bump to an 80 for him. And then Scottie Pippen Jr. drops -1. His playing time and points per game are down, but I mean his other numbers are kind of in line where it was. Maybe his 3-point shooting's dipped just a tiny bit. And then Gigi Jackson gets a position change to power forward, while John Conchar gets a position change to shooting guard, and Vince Williams gets a position change to small forward. Other news for them real quick. Marvin Bagley is back healthy. He played some minutes last night, and then Lamar Stevens is brought back on a 10-day contract. That's pretty much to weather the storm while Jaren Jackson is out. That kind of gives you another guy that can score consistently at least. Going over to the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks have one of the premier defenders in the league in Dyson Daniels. A lot of people didn't believe in him. My guy Matt has always been a fan of Dyson Daniels, and he was a huge Pelicans fan. Well, still is a huge Pelicans fan, obviously. But yeah, he's really getting a chance to show out. Dyson Daniels is on the Hawks, so a lot of more people are seeing him versus in New Orleans where you had Herb Jones as a defender, Trey Murphy emerging, and of course Zion. So now Daniels is getting his shot, and he's doing well. Daniels averaging 16 a game right now in the stretch, 7 rebounds, 5 assists to go on 54% from the floor, 47% from three. So he gets a +1 bump to an 84. Clint Capella drops -1 to an 80. He's going to be gone in the offseason, I think. Karis LeVert, they're going to risk losing him as well. Not quite sure how Karis LeVert went down in this one because he's averaging 18 a game, 52% from the floor, 34% from three. If anything, he probably should have went up one to like an 82, but it is what it is. Zachary Ricochet actually playing a lot better. Averaging 13 points. He didn't get a change. I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of people have been crapping on him. as a number one pick. There are far worse number one picks that I've seen in my NBA lifetime than Ricochet. So wishing him good luck. Georges Niang has been doing well. He gets plus one bump to a 77. 13.7 points for him to go with 4 rebounds, 41% from the floor, 38% from three. And then Mohamed Gaye gets a bump plus one for him. He's been starting games, has looked really good, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Dominic Barlow got his two-way contract converted to a standard contract, and then they brought over Jacob Toppin, who was waived by the Knicks. They brought him in on a two-way contract. I thought they were going to try to get Nikola Djurcic from the College Park Skyhawks, who was their second-round pick. I just don't think he's ready. Probably next year, they bring him on the roster and let him develop. We will see what happens with them. Going over to the Miami Heat. The Heat, another up and down team. Some games they look really good, some games not. Just quick news for them. Got some position changes right off the bat. Tyler Hero shifted back to shooting guard. Ratings change wise, Andrew Wiggins drops -1. Duncan Robinson +1 to a 78. Davion Mitchell has looked great since being in Miami. Shooting it well, playing great defense, +2 for him to a 77. Haywood Highsmith +1 to a 77. And then Terry Rozier shifted back to point guard. Rozier has just not been playing well at all. 31% from the floor, 14% from three, only averaging 7 points in 21 minutes. He's just not a fit for Miami, in my opinion. Kevin Love finally comes back from a long absence, out for personal reasons. So he's back, but they did lose Nikola Jovic for a couple weeks, so that's a tough blow for them. And no other changes for them. Going over the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets, Charles Lee's tried to change the culture in Charlotte. You know, he's the head coach, obviously. It's just not working. I think you're going to have to eventually seek to move LaMelo if you really want to take the team serious. I know that sounds crazy, but that's basically what you're going to have to do. If you want any like real long-term structure from the point guard spot, maybe they're okay with that. They already tried to move Mark Williams and then the failed trade, so that looks bad. Miles Bridges is probably going to move on in the offseason. And then you got a collection of guys that just aren't really standouts. Like it's hard to really, I guess, say that this team's going to be any good moving forward when you draft a guy like Tajon Salon, who's looked absolutely awful, and you draft him with a lottery pick. So maybe they can develop him and he turns into something different, but you know, it is what it is. But let's go into the ratings. Enough about that. LaMelo Ball drops -1 to an 89. His scoring is dipped. Shooting percentages are down as well. Yusuf Nurkic gets a +1 bump to a 78. Okay. I mean, he's averaging 7 points in 17 minutes to go with 8 rebounds, 4 assists. I guess, 78's not going to hurt anything. All the way down for the bottom tier end of the roster because they had so many injuries. Taj Gibson goes +1 to a 73. -1 for Wendell Moore to a 73. KJ Simpson +1 to a 73. Tajon Salon -1 to a 72. They brought on Malachi Flynn on a hardship 10-day contract. Dominic Baugh has actually looked solid in a backup role. He goes +2 for him to a 72. And then Daquan Jeffries gets a drop -1 to a 71. Hopefully they get Brandon Miller back next year. They can figure things out and go from there. I would want to wait if they move LaMelo just to see how he pairs with healthy Brandon Miller himself, potentially whatever draft pick they get, and a couple other pieces around them. Let's see how that looks first. Going over the Utah Jazz, they are definitely in the sweepstakes for Cooper Flagg. They've been resting guys like crazy. One game they'll play him, the next game they don't. So it's really an up and down mixed bag for the roster. John Collins gets a +1 bump to an 85, 22 points, 7.5 rebounds over this stretch for him. Jordan Clarkson goes -1 to an 80. +1 for Keontae George to an 80. Keontae has actually scored much more efficiently lately, so good to see him turn things around. Isaiah Collier has looked great in the point guard role. I'd like to see him shoot it from three better, but just his distributing alone has really helped. Doesn't shoot it the greatest, but that's okay. He gets a +2 bump to an 80. Kyle Filipowski +1 bump to a 78. 78 for Collier, 78 for Filipowski. My mistake there. Bryce Sensabaugh gets a +1 to a 76. Then we get Jaden Springer, who was brought back on a standard contract, +2 to a 73. He's a favorite of Will Hardy. And then +2 for Micah Potter to a 73 as well. He's in and out of the rotation at backup power forward. Going over to the Sacramento Kings, they got a devastating blow with Domantas Sabonis news that he's going to be out for a little while. A lot has been made of the Kings since the De'Aaron Fox trade. I mean, I thought the trade was okay. Fox didn't want to be there. You can kind of retool in the offseason. The question is, how are they going to retool in the offseason? Zach LaVine +1 to an 88 overall, or +2 to an 88, excuse me. 24 points a game, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 53 and 49 shooting splits from the floor. Domantas Sabonis does get a drop, -1. His scoring had been way down. Especially shooting the three. He hasn't looked good there. But now he's out with injury. We get Keon Ellis +1 to a 79 overall. He's been consistent through and through. Jake LaRavia gets a -2 bump to -2 drop to a 76. Shifted to small forward in this update. Trey Lyles +1 to a 75. Markelle Fultz, who was brought on, -1 to a 75 as well. New York Knicks, we get some changes for them. Some personal news out of the Knicks. Something's going on with Karl-Anthony Towns. Something personal with his girlfriend, Jordan Woods. And you know how everything transpired with Karl-Anthony Towns' mom, and so he kind of had to take a game or two, just personal time with that, and so hopefully moving forward everything's okay. Just want to get that out of the way. Just one change for the Knicks as far as ratings, -1 drop for Campaign. I thought Landry Shamet has been, he's been playing well in the rotation. So they've got guys that have kind of pieced together in the rotation. Mitchell Robinson's back healthy now as well. Some changes for them. Marjan Beauchamp, 2-way contract. Ariel Hukparty still doesn't have his injury added. Anton Watson brought over from the Celtics. He was waived from them, brought in on a 2-way contract as well. Going over to the Los Angeles Lakers. So the Lakers actually get some changes here, and it's long overdue. You can make a case that LeBron is technically the power forward, I guess. But if you're really going to stack the positions, the 2K did the right thing, swapping LeBron back to small forward, Hachimura and Finney-Smith the power forward. Dalton Connects shifts up to small forward because a lot of the backup 2-guard minutes had gone to Gabe Vincent. So, I mean, that works overall. Ratings changes wise, +1 for Hachimura, who's now out for a little bit. We'll see how long. Jackson Hayes gets a bump, +2. He basically is there to rim run and score. Jared Vanderbilt, -1 to a 78. He hasn't looked like himself overall. And then Jordan Goodwin, they want to find a way to convert him to a standard contract that's probably going to be waiving Cameron Reddish at one point. And then if they bring in Trey Jemison, then they would waive Alex Lynn, or you could do it vice versa, however they want to. But Jordan Goodwin gets a +1 bump to a 75. He's been in the rotation before going out with injury himself. Going over to the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic, man, what a change for them. They haven't looked great, to be honest. Pablo Banchero gets a +1 bump back up to 89. He is a 2K supporter and basically does a lot of things for them. So they're going to try to keep his rating hovered pretty high to appease him. That's just my opinion. Goga Batazde -2 to an 80. Wendell Carter Jr. +1 to an 80 overall. Cole Anthony -1 to a 78. Jonathan Isaac struggled -2 to a 76. Who has really, really struggled badly is Kentavious Caldwell Pope, especially from 3. He goes -1 to a 76. And then if you're going to lower somebody, Gary Harris, -1 to a 72, you got to lower Trevelyan Queen down, considering he doesn't play hardly at all, and he's looked awful shooting it when he does. So he should have went down to like a 70, and then that would have put more players better in line. But that's just my opinion. The Dallas Mavericks, everybody's heard the news. Kyrie Irving, unfortunately, suffers the torn ACL. No, it is not due to too many minutes. It was a freak injury to where he stepped and his leg hyperextended, essentially. And then you got the ACL tear in there. The Mavericks got to make a decision, because looking at it, Kyrie can opt in and then, make a decision later. He can opt out and then change teams. They have Anthony Davis there. A lot of things. Klay Thompson still. Obviously, Klay came to play with Luka and Kyrie. It's a lot of things, because Kyrie's going to be out for most of next season as well. So it's going to be a long journey for them. Just not a lot of fun in Dallas right now. Looking at the ratings changes for them, Spencer Dinwiddie drops -1 to a 78, while Dante Exum gets a bump +1 to a 79. Dinwiddie has struggled shooting the ball, 36 and 21 shooting splits in this cycle. Kai Jones went off last game. He is their new two-way addition. Considering they can't add a player to like April 10th or something like that. I don't remember. Maybe it was April 1st. I don't recall exactly the date. But it's some time from now before they can add an additional player. And so they're stuck. Kessler Edwards gets a bump +2 to a 71. He had been starting at small ball center, power forward, just different spots. -1, 74 overall for Olivier Prosper. Same for Jaden Hardy. He drops -1. He's now hurt. So we'll see how long he is out for. Like I said, at this point, I don't see Dallas making the playoffs. There's no point in them making the playoffs. So they're probably going to sit Anthony Davis the rest of the season as well. Moving on to the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets obviously aren't trying to win, but Jordi Fernandez is such a good coach. They end up winning some games. So it's just interesting to see kind of what their philosophy is going to be moving forward. Maybe you'll see guys sit here and there. They did just get D'Angelo Russell back. Nick Claxton, +1 to an 82. Zaire Williams, +1 to a 78. Day'Ron Sharpe, +1 to a 78. Trendon Watford, +2 to a 76. Interesting with Watford is he actually plays backup point guard as well. So something to monitor there. Tyrese Martin got converted to a standard contract not long ago, +2 to a 74. They do bring in Tyson Etienne on a two-way contract. They waived Kendall Brown. Etienne shot like 47% in the G League from 3. So we'll see what he can do in the NBA if he gets any minutes. Moving over to the Denver Nuggets. Nuggets had some position changes basically just reverting guys back to their original positions. So you've got Murray back to point guard, Brown back to shooting guard, Porter back to small forward, and Westbrook back to point guard. So those were the position changes. Then ratings change wise, Michael Porter Jr. drops to an 83, +1 for Aaron Gordon, -1 for Russell Westbrook, +2 for Zeke Nnaji. Um, I think the Nuggets need one or two more players to get more depth on the team. The problem is just financially getting players in there for the playoffs. We'll see. Moving over to the Indiana Pacers. Excuse me, I had a yawn. Not a lot of great sleep last night. So, anyway, Indiana Pacers. So they've been actually doing pretty well lately. Pacers overall, I think if you're a team in the East in the first round, you don't want to play Indiana, just the pace they play at, things like that. Halliburton goes +1 to an 88, -1 for Pascal Siakam to an 87. Halliburton has been really coming back on 23 and 11 in this stretch, so he deserved to go up. Andrew Nemhard, +1 to an 82, +1 to an 83 for Miles Turner. Obi Toppin +1 to an 81. He's been consistent all season. And then Jarris Walker is out of the rotation, so he drops -1 to a 76. They bring on Tony Bradley. If you remember, he was drafted in, I believe, 2017 draft. Let me see. Yeah, 2017 draft out of North Carolina. He was playing in the G League for the College Park Skyhawks, so he gets a chance on a 10-day contract. Previously, they had Jahlil Okafor, so they're just kind of cycling big men in and out of 10-day contracts for now. Moving on to the New Orleans Pelicans. Pelicans got a bunch of changes to them, especially with the positions. Zion is now a small forward. CJ McCollum is a point guard. Trey Murphy III is a shooting guard. Brandon Boston got shifted to shooting guard. Bruce Brown to small forward. And that is it. Oh, and then Jamal Cain to power forward and Keon Brooks to small forward. They made a change to their two-way spot. Lester Canones, previously with the Sixers and Warriors, brought in just for some extra shooting, I think. But changes-wise, as far as the ratings go, +1 for Zion to an 89, -2 to Trey Murphy to an 84. He's only averaging 18 points on 37% from the floor, 29% from three in this one. 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Previously, I thought 86 was a little high for him, so that gets him back in line. Looking at Zion, he's been really good. They've been I think they're 4-10 since he's come back. Looking at them in the stretch of games that basically in between this, they've gone 5-4. So we'll see what happens with Willie Green. I think he's going to get replaced in the offseason. 27 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists for Zion. I personally think putting the ball in Zion's hands and letting him kind of just create more as a small forward works out. He's just never going to be a shooter, though, so that's the disadvantage. So we'll see what happens. I'm curious to see what happens moving forward, especially if they get a high draft pick. Detroit Pistons, we get a bump +1 for Cade Cunningham. I saw on Operation Sports, Jeebs was commenting about the post control ratings, so I wanted to show those really quick. They did not change. Go figure, right? We have a change. Asar Thompson +2 to an 82, +1 for both Malik Beasley and Tobias Harris, both to 81 overall. That's all of the changes for the Pistons. Let's jump over to the Toronto Raptors. Raptors, we got an injury to Dick. So Grady Dick basically did not, uh, probably will not come back this season. He's got like a groin injury, a couple other things going on. So I'll be curious to see if we see him the rest of the year. Changes for them in this one. We get Emmanuel Quickly goes +1 to an 82, 19 points a game, 42 from the floor, 38 from three, 5 assists, 4 rebounds in this stretch. Speaking of Grady Dick, he drops -2 to a 79. He had been struggling really badly shooting from the floor, only 8 points a game on 33% from the floor. Position change for Chris Boucher to center. Jacoby Walter is now the starter at the 2. He goes +1 to a 77. He hit the game winner the other night from 3. And then Boucher gets an actual -1 to a 79. Other than that, Jonathan Mogbo goes -1 to a 75. He had been battling injury previously. They converted Orlando Robinson +2 to a 74. They brought back Jared Rhoden, who they had on 10-day contracts, to a two-way. And then they just added yesterday Colin Castleton to a 10-day contract as well. Going over the Houston Rockets, not a lot of people are aware, but there was a secondary ratings update after the initial one last Thursday. On Friday, they re-updated Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet. So those ratings that you see here are from the last one, if you still have the one from Thursday. Position changes here. Amen Thompson gets shifted to power forward as it was announced that he'll start for the foreseeable future over Jabari Smith Jr. Looking at the ratings changes, +1 for Tari Eason, -1 for Jabari Smith, -1 for Cam Whitmore, -1 for actually I think it's a +1. I think I might have put it wrong. I'll have to double check that for Steven Adams overall. But we had a game. Reed Shepard went off when he finally started. It was like 25 points, 5 assists. Jayshawn Tate actually drops -1 to a 73 as well. They bring David Roddy on a two-way contract, converted Nate Williams. And that's it for the Rockets. Let's move on to the San Antonio Spurs. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit because there are time constraints when recording on the PlayStation video. So, plus I don't want to drag it out too long. So Spurs changes. De'Aaron Fox drops -2 to an 86. To me, he's looked okay with the Spurs, but obviously with no Wemby, it's going to look a lot different. Stephon Castle goes +1 to an 82. 16 points a game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 43 and 26. Not the greatest shooting splits, but it is what it is. Chris Paul, -2 to an 80. Keldon Johnson, +1 to a 79. And then Harrison Barnes, -1 to a 78. Mamu Kilashvili gets a position change to center. Moving on to the Phoenix Suns. This is where it gets interesting. A lot of bad vibes coming from Phoenix. If you've watched the broadcast at all, just the body language just looks gross overall from coach to player. Kevin Durant's going to get traded. Probably Mike Budenholzer gets fired. They somehow find a way to move Bradley Beal, I would assume, and then start over with Devin Booker and some other pieces. We'll see what Matt Ishbia puts together. I don't think James Jones will be back with the team, so we'll see what major changes there. Speaking of major changes, Durant goes -2 to a 93. I mean, his numbers are where they were. Like, I don't know about that one. John, maybe you can elaborate as far as with the Suns specifically with Booker and Durant. Booker actually shifts to point guard, Durant to small forward. Booker, 24 points a game, 47 from the floor, 39% from three. Drops -2 to a 91. Tyus Jones ended up being the backup now, -2 to a 78. Nick Richards, -1 to a 78, and then +1 to a 78. or +2 to a 78 for Bol Bol, who's been starting at the 4. Royce O'Neal +1 to a 77. Mason Plumlee -2 to a 76. OKC Thunder, um, they've been solid as usual. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 51 the other night. So Jalen Williams gets a bump +1 to an 89. Isaiah Hartenstein -2 to an 83. Kenrich Williams, they are fascinated with Kenrich Williams for whatever reason. He gets a +1 bump to 79 despite playing 14 minutes a game, 5 points, 3 rebounds, 47 and 40 splits. To me, that doesn't make sense to have him at a 79, but whatever. And then Jalen Williams -1 to a 77. Minnesota Timberwolves finally getting healthy again, except Rudy Gobert is still out. And 2K does not have him designated with injury, as they're missing many other injuries. Looking at their roster-wise, though, Naz Reid goes +1. No change for Naz Reid, excuse me. He gets a position change to center. Dante DiVincenzo +1 to 78 overall. I had that mixed up on my notes. Rob Dillingham -1 to a 75. +2 for Jalen Clark, who also changes positions to small forward. He's a 75 now. Terrence Shannon +4 to a 75. Joe Ingles -1 to a 73. And then Josh Minot -1 to a 72. Going over to the Portland Trailblazers, they actually have looked much better on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see what happens with Chauncey Billups. I still think he ends up elsewhere as a coach. Maybe even takes the year off next year. As far as changes go, Denny Avdia, position change to small forward. He goes +1 to a 70 or to an 81. Shaden Sharp +1 to an 81. Tamani Kamara, they did a big update on him. Real 2K Insider will dive into the badges because it looks like a bunch were added to get his defensive metrics up. +3 for him to an 81 overall. Then we have Donovan Clingan +1 to a 79. Jeremy Grant is out right now with an injury. He goes -1 to a 79. And then Jabari Walker gets a +2 bump to a 76. Delano Banton shifted to shooting guard positions-wise. And that is all the changes for Portland. Moving over to the Golden State Warriors. Steph gets rewarded for his big game that he had. He goes up +1 to a 96 overall. Weirdly, they have Jimmy Butler at the power forward, and they have Moses Moody at small forward. That's actually the other way around, unless I'm just completely off. My understanding is that what I'm watching is Moses Moody is the small ball 4, then Butler is the 3, but it is what it is. Either way, Draymond Green is now the center. Changes for them overall, like I said, Curry +1 to a 96, Moody +1 to a 78, and then Guy Santos has been good in large spurts, +1 to a 75 overall. They did make some changes. They added Taron Armstrong over from the interesting. They added Taron Armstrong from Australia. I'm looking at, does anybody see what I do? Wrong skin tone and everything there. Something's not right with that, so we'll see. But they did add Braxton Key on a 2-way contract from the San Diego Clippers. Pat Spencer got a regular contract. They brought Kevin Knox back on a 10-day contract as well. Interesting with that skin tone update there for Taron Armstrong. Last but not least, Washington Wizards. So the Wizards have injuries themselves. Brogdon's probably out still for a considerable amount. They were resting guys kind of here and there. Jordan Poole is one that's out right now. But consistency is key, and Chris Middleton has been consistent as much as he can within the situation for the Wizards. So, I mean, that's good for them. They do have some ratings changes. Bilal Coulibaly -1 to an 80. He shifts to shooting guard. Kind of think Middleton's the 2 and Koulibaly's the 3, but I guess you could be subjective either way. Marcus Smart drops -1 to an 80. He is the backup point guard right now. Corey Kispert gets a position change to small forward, no ratings change. Keyshawn George, no position change, but ratings changes -2 to a 76. And then Rashawn Holmes +1 to a 76. Changes for them, they added or claimed JT Thor off waivers from Cleveland for their two-way contract spot. And that's it. That's pretty much the update in a whole. There's no retro roster updates or anything like that. So anybody that's curious to know that, I didn't see anything. If you find something else, let me know. In the meantime, like I said, please hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you share the video and then subscribe to the channel as well. Getting back to more custom roster content. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have a release of the 96-97 video. Thanks to Hoodie Pap for all his great work on the tendencies and some other things, ratings, badges, things like that. So I'll have that video out. And then next week, I will be able to finally complete my 2018-2019 roster. Never released. I have all the players and things like that. Now I'm just going through and touching up some stuff. So look for those videos next. We should get a player likeness update sometime at the end of the month or early April. So that'll be another video from there. But hope everybody enjoyed this one. Let me know who you thought should go up or down in the comment section. Always love to hear different opinions based on stats and things like that and why things should be the way they are. Hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Thanks for watching and take care.